Okay, and we are back to translation time. That was quite the commercial break. But it's time to keep on asking our translator Luke some questions. So we were talking about Scott Fall there during the break, and just could you bring up him and your relationship together as classmates at NTNU? Sure. Well, I was talking about how with Chris and Daryl, those two they had more experience than me, of course. They'd been in Taiwan for Chris, 30 plus years, Daryl, 15 or something like that. And they were established translators. But for Scott, it was very interesting for me because he was actually my straight D. And even though he's a good amount older than I am, maybe close to 2 decades, but he was younger than me as a student. He was my straight D, right? He was a grade younger than me. And I could just tell that he had this passion for translation, that he really wanted to, the stuff that I talked about, that I wanted to become a literary translator and I had these goals, he was making the effort to make happen, constantly knocking on doors, asking questions, being very aggressive about taking opportunities, doing whatever he could to get someone to notice his work. And I wasn't doing that stuff. I wasn't working as hard as him. Even though I think when I first met him, my Chinese was better. I think that was when I realized I don't want it that bad. If you ask me, do you want to play soccer, do you want to translate? I want to play soccer. With Scott, he clearly, his love in life was, or his love in terms of what he loved doing other than his family, things like that, was definitely translation. And so to me, that was the signal of, maybe it's time for you to do something else, because there's only so much space for young translators, and especially with the Chinese and English market being so small. So that was about it for that. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to transition into, and you had mentioned a little bit, but we want to hear what you enjoy translating the most. What are some of the most ideal documents that you get and you're excited to work on? Yeah, at first I wanted to do literary translation, and I had done a piece by Chen Boyan for the Taipei Chinese Pen. It was a lot of fun. I loved short stories. If I could do short stories, I think I would do them more because you get to read the plot and there's some dialogue. I love things with dialogue. Some of the there's cultural stuff that it's like a TV show and you're doing the subtitles. I did stuff on Kojak culture and different traveling programs. Those are great. The talk shows are scary because everyone's talking, trying to get their 5 seconds of fame, which can be very annoying. But I love it when the language is simple, which is probably why I don't like literary stuff, because it's meant to be confusing. And if it's confusing in Chinese and I don't really have that much of an idea about it, it's like, if I get it wrong and I translate it the wrong way, it's just too subjective. And I think that was also knowing that these guys are trying to create their own work. I think that I shouldn't, if I want to be a writer, don't be a writer by translating someone's work, just be a writer. And so that's why I want to start getting into novels and things like that. And that's why I went down that path and why I stopped wanting to do literary translation. But that, and I've done government documents for Tainan and things like that with newsletters, and when you feel comfortable in the language, it's nice. And I like simple stuff, but turning it into just something that pays attention to details. Well, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. There's every single genre has its challenges, and someone could take a children's piece and muck it all up, right? I mean, for sure, if someone doesn't know what they're doing, it's at the end of the day, your language skills need to be quite good, and you need to consider, okay, what's the level of this in Chinese? If it's written for a third grader, I need to make sure I'm using the vocabulary and the grammar at a level that is similar to what third graders are used to reading. So there's always that challenge, but I like that. Sometimes it's fun to get something simpler because you feel confident and you know that the end product is quite good. Well, unfortunately, it's about time for our show to end. But we have one more question, and there's so many readers and viewers that are excited to hear from you, and a lot of them were asking something similar to this, and it's just Now, do you have any advice for young translators? And particularly, what kind of thing or things would you do differently if you could start over? Well, thanks. It's always good to try to make sure people don't make the same mistakes I did. I mean, for me, I feel that there's two things. And one is that you have to be learning your second language all the time. You can't just go to class. For me, I've watched 30 plus Taiwanese movies with Chinese subtitles and spoken in Chinese. I read novels, I read short stories. I'm reading a book on soccer from Taiwan, and it's in Chinese. And so you have to be able to force yourself to read in your second language. And here too, and I listen to podcasts, and I used to be really into Chinese music, and this is all very important to me. But the other thing I think that people forget is that you have to be a great writer in that language you're translating into. So I don't do anything from English into Chinese because my Chinese is simply not good enough. But if, let's say you give me a novel by Wu Mingyi, okay? And let's say he's very, very popular in Taiwan, and we'll take Stephen King, yeah? Now, what I need to do if I translate Wu Mingyi into English is I need to make sure that the English is as good as a novel by Stephen King, which is written in English, right? And so that's tough, right? Stephen King is a professional writer, and I am not. But you need to be able to create something that is at that level. And I think that's a huge, huge challenge. And so what you have to do is you need to really be able to, what's the best way? Pay attention to details. You need to focus on the grammar. You need to look things up all the time on Google. You need to be asking people questions that know more than you, and you need to be reading a lot in English if you're going to be translating into English, because you need to be able to write like a professional writer, even though you're not paid as a professional writer. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we only get so much time for our show, but it's been great having you on the show today, Luke. And if any of our viewers have some questions they want to ask Luke, you can always look at his socials at the bottom of the screen, and there's also other ways if you check out any of our social media pages. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. I am your host, Luke, and this has been another 15 minutes of Translation Time. Thanks, all.
Okay.